Okay, here we are, Sunday morning, good days. Sivan, Yom Yom. Very short. First of all, there's a halachic statement in the Burcha Shekol Nihi Abirvore, which we make on everything that's not special, but everything else. So the Yud of Nihiyah has a kametz, not Nihiyah, but Nihiyah, and not a segel, not a Nihiyah. So that's the way it's written, that's the way we pronounce it. Okay, my father writes in one of his letters, this is a big one, cherish criticism, or it will place you on the true heights. It's interesting, in Hebrew, the true heights, the height is gaiva, which is the same word as gaiva, right? But gaiva is the negative of being on a height, the big, full of yourself ego. The highest levels comes from criticism, which brings you to humility, which brings you to openness and advancement in the true way of learning and integrating more and more and more. Realize your limitations and be humble when they are pointed out to you and get beyond them. All right, lesson in Tanya. We're starting a new chapter in Shahar Yichud V'Amuna. This is chapter 4 in lesson in Tanya, page 858. And over here in Likutei Morim, it's on the bottom of page 156. Okay, we have to call to mind one thing that we learned Friday, right before Shabbos. The mashal of the sun. The mashal for the sun. First of all, let's describe what the sun, though it's 93 million miles away, it not only illuminates, but gives life. It provides a life force. The energy of solar energy is not just electric energy, it's the energy which causes photosynthesis, it causes things to grow. Okay, and that's wonderful and beautiful. And we're using that mashal to say that if that sun were to actually sit down here, right, instead of being 93 million miles away, and as a result of atmospheric diffusion, it's able to enliven. If it, on the other hand, were to come down here, it would burn us up. It wouldn't. It would be the opposite of life. It would take away. It would suck in all the life. That's fine and dandy. And we're in our metaphor. We're comparing Hashem to the sun. He's the origin of everything, the origin of the light, and the beams of the sun to the ha'ora, the rays that come from the sun. But we ended with a problem. The problem is Hashem is here. He's like the sun, but the sun is here. Hashem is everywhere. Ein od milvado. There is nothing besides him. So if that's the case, how is our mashal going to work? We said that the sun, if it were here, would burn us up. Why is it that Hashem, who's here in everything, in the most minute particle and subatomic particle, why doesn't everything revert back to nothing, essentially get burned up? So that was a question that we ended our discussion on Erev Shabbos. And today he's going to address that question and introduce a fundamental factor of Hashem, which is Hashem, though he is infinite, Ein Sof, he also has the ability to be finite. And this is just a logical conclusion from the fact that if you say that Hashem is only Ein Sof, he's only limitless, without limit, then you are limiting him because you've stripped him of the ability to be limited. So it's really a more full limitlessness to say about Hashem that he is both Ein Sof, without any end, and that he can be confined in some sof, in some boundary. how that works, that he can be the sun here and not burn us up. So this is what's called the Tzimtzum, the secret of the Tzimtzum, the contraction. So let's start. Okay. Any question before we start? Let me see if we got any hands up yet. No. Okay. What we got here? Okay. Right. All right. Perek Dalet. Kihine Kasiv. It's written in the pasuk in Tilim. David HaMelech writes, Ki shemesh umogen Hashem Elokim. A sun and a sheath is Hashem Elokim. So these are two opposites, right? The sun is beaming out, and the sheath is something that you put something in to protect it, to conceal it. And we have two names. We have sun and sheath, and we have Havaya and Elokim. Havaya corresponding to the, as we'll see, to the sun, and Elokim, the name of God that we use all the time, corresponding to the sheath. The limitlessness, the sun, the light, and the limitedness, the sheath, at the same time. Pirish. So it says what he said. Shemesh umogin Hashem Elokim. Hashem is a sun and a sheath. Hashem is the sun. Elokim is the sheath. Pirish, which means Mogen. What does it mean? Is that Hashem, that Elokim is a name of God which refers to the sheath, the containment. Hunirtak. And this Mogen is a shield. That's the word that says. Mogen is actually means shield, like a shield you protect yourself with when someone's shooting arrows at you. And it's also a sheath, nirtak, a sheath like you put a knife in a sheath to protect it, that it doesn't do damage. So Hashem Elokim is Mogen, the Elokim is the sheath, is a sheath l'shemesh. It's a sheath to the sun. That's our metaphor. Lahogen, to protect, limit it. Sheyochlu habriyes l'savla, in order that the creation is able to bear, take, and live with the rays of the sun, with the effusions of divinity from the sun, without getting burned up. That's the sheath part of Hashem. That's the sheath part which is indicated by the Shem Elokim, as we'll explain. The sages have said, in the future to come, Hashem will take the sun out of its sheath. The evil people will be judged with it, the heat of the sun, and the righteous will be healed by it. So the same sun depends, now here we get the beginning of, depending on what you do with the life force that's being embedded in you from Hashem, will be the quality of it in the future. Will it be something which will burn you up in the future? I mean, this is metaphorical, of course. Or is it something whose rays which be healing? Just like a sheath is a mogen be'ad Hashem, is a protector, like mogen Avram. We call Hashem is a shield to Avram. It protects Avram. Mogen Avram. So just like this, the sheath, is a shield to the sun. So kach, similarly, Shem Elokim is Mogen L'Shem Havaya Baruch Hu. The name Elokim is a shield or a sheath to the name Havaya. We'll explain. The Shem Havaya, if you look at the name Havaya, Yud, He, Vav, He. The Perusha, the explanation of this word, of this name, Yud, Ke, Vav, Ke, or Yud, He, Vav, He, Yud, Haveh, is Shemahave Sakol, that it brings into being, that's Haveh, He, Vav, He, he brings into being everything, Ma'ayin Layesh, from nothing to something. That's the name Havaya. When we say the name of Havaya, we're referring to the capacity of God to bring that which is beyond anything, any shape or any description or anything you can say about it, into description, into form, ultimately into matter. So Yud Haveh, this is the expression Yud Ke Vav Ke Yud Haveh. And Hayud, the letter Yud, Hava is being, and the Yud, Mishameshes ala Pa'ula, refers to the action, the Yud, Shehi Beloshin Hava, it's the verb tense, Yud Hava, as he's going to explain. It refers to Hava, to be, and the Yud indicates continual being, continual state of being, never interrupted. Yud Hava. Kapirash Rashi, as Rashi explains this grammatical point on the pasuk in Eov, says Kocha Ya'asa Eov. So Eov would continually do. So from here we're applying this as a general grammatical point that the Yud refers to continuous being. So did Eov continually all the time do. And the Yud therefore in front of Hava means Hashem is continually, always bringing things into being. That's the Shem Havaya. Kol Hayomim, all the days. The Hainu, this means that his Havis Hanishba Bechol Rega Mamish. This refers, now we're referring to the Shem Havaya, continual being, that he's bringing everything into existence, into a state of being, continually, each and every moment, Mamish, Bechol Habirurim. And this is in regard to every single thing of creation is being recreated every single moment. From the so-called breath and speech, these are the metaphors we've been using, which comes out of Hashem's mouth, the words and letters, and the breath behind his mouth, behind the letters. And Hashem is continually bringing everything into existence from nothing to something each and every moment. As we learned in chapter 1 of Shar Yichud V'Emunah. Remember, this is on the pasuk in Tilim, La'olam Hashem devorach nitza b'shamayim. David HaMelech says, forever Hashem, your word is standing in the heaven. And the Baal Shem Tov gives us this fundamental interpretation that if Hashem were to stop talking for one moment, because it says, forever your word is in the heaven, David HaMelech said, if he were to so-called stop speaking, everything would revert to the nothing, the ayin that it was before the creation. So for there to be a creation, he has to invest himself in it continually. It's not sufficient for that initial creation. The initial creation that he did on the 6 days of creation is not sufficient for it to be going on continually. To be continually in a state of existence, as we spoke about above in chapter 1. When it comes to the order of praises that we give to Hashem, it's written, Kesiv, Hagodel Hagibor. He is great and he is strong. Now we're going to explain these two things in the light of Havaya, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and Elokim. Godel, on the one hand, great, and Gibor, strong. But Pirush Godel, great, well, we'll take that straight. Hu midas a chesed. It's a continual flow. That's chesed, the right side, right? The right arm, the side of chesed is continually offering itself to be in empathy with something else. That's called chesed. It's a continual flow. That's the meaning of chesed. That chesed is indicative of the aspect of Hashem, which continually flows into all the worlds and all the creatures without any end, betachlis, and without any limit. That there should be creatures coming constantly from a state of ayin into a state of yesh. The kayamim bechesed, and that they stay in existence. This is a great chesed. La'olam Hashem. It says, forever Hashem, your kindness stands in the heaven. This is chesed chinam. This is gratuitous kindness. Gratuitously, because this is his nature. It's the nature of one who is kind to be kind, right? So if you're kind, you do kindness, and this is his nature. Free chesed. This comes out, that's his nature of the gadol, the great part of him, the right side of him, so to speak. Because gedula, which is called greatness. Because it's coming from the greatness of Hashem, that he extends himself His greatness, when do you see his Hashem's greatness? The Mashal, Radhika said, this is the Mashal of a king. He's called a king, Hashem Melech, right? But you don't see his greatness. You don't see his kingship until he comes out and interacts with the kingdom. So similarly, Hashem is great. When is he great? When he's interacting with his kingdom. That's what we call greatness, and that's his extending himself. That's his gedula, the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In his glory and in himself. He gadol Hashem u'zolasa ein cheker. Great is Hashem, and to his greatness there is no measure. It's Ein Sof. It's infinite. And therefore, from this aspect of Hashem, which is the side of Chesed, the side of flow, the side of Ein Sof, so he flows, literally, his life force and his ability to bring into being from nothing to something, la'olemus, to the worlds, u'berurim, and to the creatures, ein kates, without end. There are infinite worlds and infinite creatures from the perspective of Hashem's infinity. So it brings about infinity, limitlessness. And he says, interesting, shiteva hatev lahetev, because it's the nature of one who is good to do good. And Hashem is Hashem Tov, he's good. Baal Shem Tov, right? We call him the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name, but also refers to Hashem, the one who we call the name, Hashem. His nature is to be eternally good. We're going to stop here, but this is just the right side. It doesn't, now the next thing we're going to do tomorrow, Hashem, is address the next side, Hashem Elokim. The right side is Gadol, great, and the left side is Gibor, Gibor, to restrain. And we'll get into that part tomorrow, Hashem. Okay, questions? Answers?
It would seem like the beginning is kind of hinting at what's coming.
Excuse me.
Which is, like, everybody, I don't know if everybody, but I personally, I hear about the chesed of Hashem, and it's so rapturous. But
Right.
if you see the beginning where it says that the covering of the sun, Kishem Hashem Magain Hashem Elokim.
Yeah.
So it would, and that in the future, that covering will be removed. And there will be those who will not be able to exist. So
right.
the Elokim like kind of makes it possible for Hashem's chesed. That
Yes.
there is a balance here.
Absolutely. That's why Hashem Elokim, the two are to come together. Absolutely.
Even though to us sometimes boundaries and justice sounds more harsh, there's a balance. That's what's making it happen.
Right. Yes, Gibor, from the one hand, we say is limiting, or on the other hand, is very strong. It has a positive strength, and the positive strength is if it weren't limiting, the positivity of the limitation is that we exist. You get that? If Hashem were unlimited, nothing would exist but Him, which is always true, of course. But there would be no perception, there would be no sense of individual existence without that contractedness which creates individual entities, which paradoxically also contain the infinite. Because after all, His essence is invested in us as well. So this is a living paradox, that we can be entities, that the creation can be entities, and at the same time full of the Ein Sof. And it's only He who can do that, because it's a paradox, and in our world, it's totally opposite. But there's an expression about Hashem, He's the one who's Soibel HaFachim. He's the one who can, and is the one who can carry these opposites at the same time. Hashpah. And now we have models of this, by the way, in human behavior, but they're not sequential. I mean, they're sequential, they're not coincident. And, the famous mashal that we use all the time is the father who's doing a chesed to his son by preventing him from running out into the traffic and holding him back, right? So that itself is, in one moment, a combination of chesed and gevurah. Gevurah shebechesed. And that makes everything exist with with two components: limitedness and limitlessness. So we'll get used to that idea. Okay, I don't see any other hands, so Emir Hashem will continue this and get to the other half, I think, tomorrow. Take care. Have a great day.